Is Dr. EshrgRef, and I'm an associate professor at the College of Computer Sciences and Information Technology, Jazan University, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. My today's talk is going to be about a data-oriented approach for detecting offensive language on social media. This is the outline of my talk, and yeah, first things first, it's very clear now that social media has become an essential part of our modern society, and users on social media are actually from different backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, cultures, etc. But unfortunately, recently there has been a new terminology that has been emerged due to the misuse of the internet and social media for spreading hate speech that can unfortunately drive individuals towards violence. In this context, actually, the United Nations has recently released their report on the strategic plan for on tackling hate speech on social media, and in which they defined hate speech as any kind of communication in speech, writing, or behavior that attacks or uses any discriminative language against individuals or groups based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, or gender, and which might result in generating intolerance and can be demeaning and divisive for some individuals. That's where the domain of automatic detection of offensive language has emerged recently. And as I mentioned, it's a relatively recent field, and as such, actually, there were when we started this work, one thing we noticed is the limited resources available for us. This includes the data sets and the trained models. And one of the serious attempts was made last year by the very famous SIM eval in international competition. For this purpose, actually, SIM eval have built and publicly released a data set of tweets in five languages that were English, Arabic, Danish, Greek, and Turkish. All of the data sets that were manually annotated for being offensive or not offensive. So it's a binary classification task, and this is the total number of collected and manually annotated tweets and the training data, and we have here the test data. So in this work, we will be using the Arabic data set mainly, and just a quick comparison, we can observe easily the huge difference between the English and Arabic data set. It's very well known in the natural language processing domain that English is a more well-resourced language, but we will be using in this work we will be focusing more on the Arabic dataset. Here we can see examples of the annotated dataset. It's worth mentioning that the datasets in all the five languages were manually annotated to be offensive and not offensive by native speaker, and they reported a good rate of inter-annotated agreement at 92%. So as I said, in this work will be just utilizing the Arabic part of 10,000 tweets, and this is a very quick background on the Arabic language in general. So it's official language of nearly 450 million people, and it can be classified as the standard Arabic and the dialectal Arabic. And people on social media and the users, they actually tended to use a mixture of the standard Arabic and the dialectal Arabic. So in this work, we use the machine learning based approach in which we utilize the support vector machine, and that's based on our preliminary results, in which support vector machine have shown to be the best among other classifiers on this particular binary classification task of classifying any given tweet as being offensive versus non-offensive. And in this context, it's worth mentioning that the data set that was publicly released by the same eval, it's highly unbalanced, so it's 80% non-offensive versus 20% of offensive tweets. So in this, in our experiments, we experimented with both different settings, the original unbalanced data set versus correctly balanced data set by using an oversampling approach called SMOOT. We then eventually compare the type of the language that were used. So this is a summary of the approach we utilize is about obtaining the benchmark dataset of Arabic tweets, and in order to tackle the data sparsity, we did some cleaning and pre-processing. Includes normalizing Hamza, Alif, Ta, Marbuta, and do some light stemming in order to reduce the possible word forms and have more efficient processing power when training and building the model. And then in the eventually we did a manual inspection just to see what are the main reasons for misclassified tweets, and we did a quick comparison between the English and Arabic style of offensive language use. Here is a highlight of main findings. We also experimented with different settings of the size of the training data set just to see the impact of gradually increasing the size of the training set, and the results on the trained model was always steady positive. We can see here on both F-score and accuracy score, there is a steady improvement in performance as we actually add more data set training data to the model, which indicates the positive impact of having more training example from which the model learn. Our model is support vector machine, and here is a sample of the most informative features according to our model. Our model actually find this symbol, the heart symbol, is very informative to be as an indicator of non-offensive language, for example, and squaring words very strong. You can see here the weight of this feature is very strong indicator for the negative language. Also you can see here the Jews or anything related to religion. It could be an indicator again for using offensive or hatred language. You can see also here some example of strongly strongly weighted words. This is actually a very recently published paper, actually a few days ago, that shows there is a strong tendency of English users on social media, on Twitter specifically, to show some hatred language, especially in political discourse. This is actually in line with our findings. It's worth mentioning here that we find that Arab tend to use the vulgar or straightforward negative language while they talk about topics like sport, for example, while English speakers, they tend to use more cunning or indirect negative word in context like a political discourse. Thank you so much for listening, and more than happy to hear your questions.